we're going to be creating this procedural rock material you see on your screen right now. This is what it looks like on a sphere, and this is what it looks like on an actual rock model. It's pretty rough style rock, and this is what we're going to be making in this tutorial. Let's get right into it. So you're going to want to start by opening up a new Blender scene and deleting the default cube. Next, you're going to want to add mesh, icosphere, and then subdivide it 10 times. That's plenty of subdivisions. Actually, 10 times might be a little bit too much, depending on what your computer can handle. So we'll just go with something like solid, we'll just go with something like 5 times, and then we will shade it smooth, and we get the desired effect. So then you'll want to go to your camera, and I just have it set up looking directly at the cube as it should be, and then I just took the focal length and I zoomed it up to a 102. And then for the lighting, right here I simply have a light that I set up to 1000 watts. So it's all set up like this, and then the light comes in from the top right and into the bottom left, so we can see the shadows and stuff like that. So once you have it set up, now we just have to open the shading tab. So this is our shading scene, and we go here. And for me, I like turning off and going into the default view right here. So just to do that, you open up the drop down here, and it's set to this normally, because it uses the inbuilt sort of HDRI thing in the background. So I just turn that off by turning the world on, and so we can see the nice shadows here. So then step 1 is going to be create your new material. We'll call this a rough rock. And then let me just go ahead and reset my workspace so that oops, it is. Okay, if it's going to be the viewport, this is going to be the shader editor. Alrighty, now that I've reset up my workspace so that you can hopefully see the nodes better, we'll go ahead and get started. So step 1 is to enable the node Wrangler add-on. So just go to edit preferences, add-on, search for node Wrangler, and then just check that, save your preferences, and then we'll be good to go. So step 1 that I like to do whenever I make my materials is I like to go and create the bump maps first. So to do that, we're going to go create a noise texture, and while I have the noise texture selected, press Ctrl T. What this does is it opens up a mapping for your material, basically to map the texture around it properly. And if we look at it right now, by hitting Ctrl Shift and left click, we can see what the noise texture is looking like. So we see it right here. It's looking pretty decent. I'll make it a little bit bigger just so y'all can see better. And we're just doing the bump right now. So, and big thing that we're going to do is switch this from object into the vector. That's something that we need to change. You see it changes the texture a little bit, which is fine. And this is what we want. So step 2 is we're going to adding 3 levels of detail to the bump on this. And so why 3? That's just what I've been taught and what I've found to work and look the nicest. So you can duplicate them singly like that. But something that's really useful is you can press Ctrl Shift D, and then it keeps the vector input on there. And you can do that again, and then now you've got 3 of these noise textures. And currently they all look the same, so it's really just doing the same thing. And that's not what we want. So on this first one, you're going to want to change the scale, and I like to set it to a 1. And Control Shift left click again on it so we can see what it's looking like. I know it's super small right now, but that's okay. We'll get to more detail later. And then I'll change the detail to 4 and the roughness to 8.4, or to a 0.6 actually as well. And so it's not looking very good. We can't see much of the black that's happening here. So to be able to see what's going on, we're going to add a coloring by hitting Shift A and then search, and then you can search your color and then add it in, right? So then we're going to drag that into this node right here, and then now the viewer node is automatically viewing the color ramp. So you see, like if we draw the black out, we can see it a lot more, and this is exactly what we're looking for. So in this case, actually though, we're not going to keep it at the normal black. We are going to change it to a more of a gray. About a 0.06 is what I found to work the best. And then we're going to be switching it to a position of about, I don't know, somewhere around here-ish. So not too much. And then we're going to draw the white out a little bit more actually as well. And so we get a little bit more contrast going on here is the idea. And this part of the bump that we're going to be doing is to show like the bigger spots in the rock because the rocks aren't perfectly smooth. And so this is going to be basically just kind of offsetting it. So then this next part down here, if we control shift left click, again, it's the same as it was before on the top. So we're just going to go ahead and shift D with the color ramp selected, and then change the gray. We're going to change this one all the way back to a black. And then what we're going to do is plug it into right here, plug the factor into the factor, and then now we can see this, we can see the color ramp doing its thing. So where we're going to want to position these is we're going to put this one a bit down here. Actually, first, let's mess with the noise texture to make sure we're doing this right. So we're going to switch the noise to 10. We're going to make this one bigger because here we have like the bigger details. And then this one is being a little the medium sized details. And so we're going to be upping the scale. We're going to be upping the detail as well to about an 8. You can play with it. You can see how less detail, it's more like blurry, and then the more detail you add, it gets a little more grainy. And the graininess is what we want, especially for the high detail renders. And so roughness, I found that upping it kind of isn't what we want because we're going to be doing an extra layer of detail down here with this extra noise texture. And so I actually lowered this one a little bit just to make it slightly more blurry. And this is fine because we're doing an extra layer of detail. If we were going to be having it as this is the final layer, I would probably up the roughness to probably like a 0.6 like we did on the other one, but we're doing an extra layer of detail, and so that's what we want. And we have the black, we push it forward a little bit to add some contrast, and then the white we do the same. We're actually going to draw it back a little bit. And so a little bit off the edges on the black and the white. Next, we're going to go down to this guy. Actually, first, I'll show you how we're going to combine these first, okay? So we have this one, the big one, and then we have this one, the small one. How do we get them to be combined into one? So we're going to shift A, add in a mix RGB, like this. And basically what this is going to do is going to take the two colors and then mix them. Now, this isn't mixing exactly how we want. It's like 50-50. We want to have all of them, but both of them. So we can switch it to multiply and 1. So what this is doing is it's taking both the textures and it's putting them and it's combining them perfectly. So as you can see here, we have this, and they're combining, and we're not losing any of the color from either of them. And that is what that does. So next, and you can push this, you can turn clamp on this if you want. I have standard color on in my film tab. So basically you can go here into your output, not film color management. I have mine on standard, so it can go from black to white, and the white doesn't go on infinitely. And so that's something you can change if you want. It doesn't really make a big difference though. But yeah, you can press clamp or not. For me, it won't do anything, but if you're on Filmic instead of standard, it might make a difference. And I would recommend turning on clamp. Anyways, now that we know how to combine these, again, you can view them by control shift left clicking. That should be pretty basic by now. Let's go ahead and add this last layer of detail. So this one, we're going to want to turn the scale up quite a bit. We're going to go up to a 25. I mean, that's not exactly a lot, but in general, but that's what we're using today. We're turning the detail up a lot because this is going to be the fine detail, and we're also turning the roughness up to 8.6. This is going to be very fine. Actually, very fine for a rock, I guess you could say. And then we'll add another color ramp, shift A, color ramp. And then we're actually going to leave the black all the way down here, as always, factor into the factor. We're going to control shift left click to view what's going on here, make sure our color ramp's working. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to be switching the color on this one to white, actually, because we don't want this, because this bump is super fine, right? And so we don't want it to be making a huge difference on the little dots, because then we have like little needles poking out of a rock, and that's not what we want. And so we're going to change the white, which is this part of the bump that pokes out. Black stays flat, and then the white pokes. So we're going to be switching this all the way down to about a 0.2, ish, something like this. And it blurs things out a lot, but it's going to add a little nice detail in the end. So we're going to go ahead, we need to add this to the others. So we're going to press the multiply node right here, and then Shift D, and then place it here. And we're going to plug this one into the bottom. It's not really going to matter. And then plug the color into the top, color 1 and color 2. Then we can Control Shift left click on your multiply node, and then we have something like this. And it's looking pretty good in my opinion. It's what the final render is going to look like. So that is what we wanted. So I'm just going to move all this down here real quick, and then select these, press Control J, and then with the frame selected, hit N to open up my panel over here. And then we're going to give this a label, and we're going to call it bump and roughness. And so that is done. We're almost done with the entire material now. So all we need to do is to convert this into the bump data, is add a bump node. So then we can plug this color into the height, and Control Shift left click, and then give it a second to load. And here we have the bump. You can see the fine detail in here, the little bumps that are getting added. And then you can sort of see the largerness, the larger detail as well. But it's starting to look rough, like the rough rock. So then once we've added the bump, now we can add in another color ramp. And with this color ramp, this is going to be controlling the roughness. So we can take the color from this, plug it into the color ramp, Control Shift left click on the color ramp, and this is the roughness map is looking like. And rocks are generally pretty rough. They're not going to be very shiny unless you're by a river or something. That's just not something you're really going to see much of. And so that is what we're going to be changing here, because we need this to be less black, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at. So the color we're going to be using for this one is, I'm just going to go ahead and implement it. It's going to be basically a dark gray, and basically it's a 0.6 hue, 0.45 value. That's basically it. And then we're going to be moving this white part of the color ramp way down to like 0.4, which is essentially, this is the roughness map now. So what this does is you might not be able to see in the video, but you can barely see some contrast happening here. The farther you bring the white down, the more contrast you see. And so yeah, you can play with this as you want once we get the final render of everything in here. But I found that about a 0.4 is what looked the best for me. But for now, to keep it visible, we'll bring it way down so you can see the contrast here in the color ramp. And then I'll move it back later. So then we can just plug this into the roughness map. And earlier I forgot to plug in the normal map on the bump into the normal. So if we look at the principal VSDF by Control Shift and by left clicking on this giant node here, it will show us what we've done so far. And currently it's not looking too bad. We have a nice bump for the roughness, and the roughness, you know, we can draw this out. If we put it all the way up here, that's a little laggy. And then, whoa, where did mine? That was weird. Okay, so basically, if we darken this like this, yeah, you can see it starts to get a little bit shiny in here. And that's not what we want. We're at EB right now, so it's not exactly the best. Okay, so now that we are here, we have everything plugged in. We have our color here. We set it to, I ended up in changing straight from the hex value. We switched it to about a 0.4, just ish on the roughness, so that we get a little bit of contrast in the roughness. This is positioned about here, and that's about it so far. So now all we have to do is add in the color. This is already looking pretty nice, as I said earlier. So, I mean, you could just leave it here and then play with the base color on your own, like maybe darken it up. And I mean, honestly, you could get away with a rock just like this, but I like to add a little bit of contrast in the color. So to do that, we're just going to simply add in another noise texture, Shift A, search for the noise texture, and then drag the vector into the vector, and then we'll go ahead and duplicate a color. We're going to be changing the color, so it doesn't really matter, they're not black and white. And so then simply, on the scale for this, we're going to be switching it to a 3.5. We'll go ahead and I'll plug this into here real quick. Let me just change this to black, and this one is white, just so that we can see what's going on here. So we want the 5, we switch it to a 3.5. Oops, not 3.58. It actually probably wouldn't make much of a difference. But anyways, this is about what it looks like right now, and we need to add some more detail. So I'm going to push the detail to 16, but I think it's the max might be 12. The max is 12 or 16. I switch it to 16 so I can get the much detail. So then I do the other things at 8.5. This is what the color is going to be looking like right now. And the color isn't correlated to the bump at all. The bump is doing its own thing, the color is doing its own thing. So that is exactly how we want it. And so now, to mess with the colors, we're going to be adding one to the middle. And then now, we're going to be doing exact hex values for this. We can switch up the colors later if you want, but essentially, that is what we'll be doing. For the center color, we're going to be wanting to give it a hex value of 808388. And then basically what this is it's a light gray, but it's slightly tinted towards the blue. And so then this first color, we're going to want to give a hex value of 474850. And that's going to be a darker gray, but it's slightly more saturated towards the blue. And this other color, the last one, third one, we're going to be giving a hex value of A9, D. And then that is going to include the color. So this is what the color is looking like on its own. We get a little bit of a mix of both. And something that I've noticed that you can play with, I'll show you in the final product like this. So just connect the color to the color, and then we get our material. Alrighty, and now that we have added all the colors in, we can play with them a little bit. Either make the highlights bigger, a little more shallow. And the actual material, I use a 0.745 on this. You can play with it how you want. And there we go. There we have it. There is our rock material. As you can see, we have the different parts of the bump playing in. Down here, I'll go into layout so we can get this nice on the big screen. Keep in mind, this is the EV under right here. I'm advocating the EV. Well, that's a little laggy. But yeah, it's just because I'm recording at the same time, and my computer, I'll be honest, ain't the best. And so yeah, we get the small bumps here, we get the larger bumps that we can see on the edges and stuff. And then we get the different discoloration of the color. And something you can do if you want a solid color is, like I said earlier, you can just take out the color ramp for the color in general, like this. You can just go like this, cut that off, and then you get a solid color. You can play with it how you want, you know. You don't want to miss the hue too much, maybe slight blue, but yeah, you can make it lighter, darker if you want to do it by one. Or if you like the multiple colors, but you don't like how varied it is, you can simply just up the scale on this, like super high, like a 250. Like that, and then you can get, you know, some variation in the color, while also having multiple colors in there at once, so it's not all just the same. But yeah, and the final material, this is the node setup, and that is it. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to check out the other materials you see on this channel. And yeah.